Hello, mentors. Welcome to our podcast series, Mentorships in Education, brought to you by Just Education at justeducationfirst.com. I am your host, Judith Epstein. I am very excited about the wide range of experts who have volunteered to give up their time and expertise. They will share their innovative ideas, their exciting perspectives, their rich resources, and their research with us. Please continue to delve into these topics on their websites and with your legal counsel, healthcare provider, and education professional. Our guests will have information that will be relevant to mentors supporting struggling students, parents, teachers, administrators, legal support, and health professionals. We will address all levels of education with issues that affect academic performance. Our goal is to open discussions and introduce a variety of approaches to those searching for information in a free venue. So mentors, let me introduce our guest for today. Welcome, mentors, to our 34th episode of Mentorships in Education. We have a guest today that I actually sought out because it's a topic that we have explored, and I thought it was time to go back and do a little bit more on the topic of reading. There are reading and associated challenges that are unfamiliar topics to us. And we have explored this topic before with David Bolton when we talked about his software that supports reading struggles, with Seedham Knab and her decodable books for kids with dyslexia. We spoke to Russell Van Brocklin, himself a dyslexic, and the creator of a new and exciting successful approach to reading that is targeting dyslexics. But we haven't explored reading in a while. And when I ran across what Joan Brennan was doing, I decided it was time to revisit it. It was kind of a deja vu moment for me. And I decided that we needed to look at some of the things that she was doing. So I want to welcome Joan. Thank you very much for coming and joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're delightful, and I have thoroughly enjoyed speaking with you, and what you're doing is so exciting. I want to tell our listeners a little bit about you. We're going to be posting a more extensive biography on the site, so people can certainly look and read more about you. But let me just tell a little bit about what you're doing. Joan is the parent of 4 sons. She's an educator, a business owner, and a twice patented inventor of customizable tools for readers of all ages. Her physical reading focus cards, and by that she means cards that you actually hold in your hand, physical cards, have been patented, and digital reading focus app for the computer, different applications, support for readers of all ages and abilities. Mrs. Brennan's innovative reading aids can be especially helpful to many with ADHD, dyslexia, autism, and other issues that often impact reading success. Since 2007, her Reading Focus Cards tools, manufactured in St. Louis, have helped thousands of readers, both here in the United States and around the world, which is very exciting. Just to kind of give you an idea here about why I'm wanting to do this. When I was speaking with Joan, she told me about an experience she had, and I think it's so indicative of the kinds of experiences that teachers who have been in education, whether they're, been there for 2 weeks or whether they've been there for, 20 years, have with kids in their room, and they have this panic, this confusion as to exactly what to do to help these kids. So I want Joan to talk to us a little bit about her aha moment, which is, again, something that we can relate to, and how she went on this path of developing the software and the hard materials that she has developed. Joan?
Great. Thank you, first of all, for inviting me here. I appreciate that, Judy. And also things you're doing to make educators, parents, administrators aware of what there is actually available other than traditional methods It's awesome.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
one more thing, it's very timely that you've invited me during this particular time because it's Dyslexia Awareness Month.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yes, and also Learning Disability Awareness Month. So we're hitting a lot of things here in our podcast. So I thank you for all of that and your timeliness.
Thank
So
you.
to answer your question about how this all came to be, yes, there was a middle school student of mine who was diagnosed as having ADHD, trouble focusing. She was given a medication each day called Ritalin. And the day that she came to me and we assigned two to 3 pages to be read during a silent reading period in class, she was able to articulate to me that she did not have her medicine that day. Mm-hmm. Dad had forgotten to give it to her, and it was going to be an issue. And wouldn't you know, that was the year we instituted a block of 90 minutes for language arts.
Oh my gosh, this poor kid.
Yes, yes. And the writing was on the wall when she told me this. And I said, listen, we need to do something and we need to do it now. And whether it was intuitive as a teacher, as a parent, I don't know. But on my desk, there was a manila folder heading to the recycling bin. And it just had not made it there yet. And I thought, on the whim, I picked it up and I started to cut a card out of it with a window in the middle of it, much like a 3x5 index card.
Right.
And it had a 1/2 inch wide opening or height of opening of about a 1/2 inch, but about 3.5 inches long. So it was closed on all 4 sides. I said, I don't know if this is going to work. This is something that's just kind of come to my mind while I'm trying to attack your problem. And I said, but let's try it. It won't hurt a thing. So she tried it and she focused each line on what she was reading. And after about 2 pages, she said, I think I know what I read. I said, really? Let's answer some questions and find out. So she knew the answers to every question I asked her. I couldn't imagine that she would have been able to do this without some kind of aid. And she said, could I take this to my next class? And I said, who would say no to that? So, right. Of course, the answer was yes.
Right.
And she used it indefinitely until I guess it fell apart. I didn't hear a lot more after that, although I did present the idea and the experience to my principal at the time. And he said, we need to do something about this. You need to do something about this. Well, you never quit your day job. So in the summers, teachers capitalize on other activities. And summer after summer after summer, from 1998 until about 2006, I gave my all to this project and doing a lot of research and a lot of consultation with medical professionals and educators and special needs resource individuals. They brought me to a point where I could provide this for a greater number of individuals, not just those in my classroom. So the first thing out of the box was the handheld tool because it was the least expensive to produce. And it was simple. And it was able to, it was accessible. And that's one of the main objectives I have. It's got to be accessible. It's got to be reasonable in price. And that way we can reach greater numbers of individuals who have literacy challenges of different types.
I am interested in the card because from my perspective, it was a tool this young girl was able to use instead of taking medication.
Yes. This is a big deal because we're talking about a non-invasive approach rather than an invasive one that may have residual effects years later. Okay, that's a real issue. And we still don't know the residual effects of a lot of these, well, let's just call them ADHD medications, antidepressants, whatever. So some even contest that cognitive abilities are diminished over a period of time that these things are used. So I'm all about natural approach if it is effective, not just to use it as a Band-Aid, but it ends up being a tool that can be placed on the physical reading material, and the window can be focused on top of the line that needs the immediate attention. You can insert a colored filter that works best for a particular reader, and what one color works for one may not work for another. Do you have a question?
Our readers are not going to be able to see this.
Okay.
So I want you to describe a little bit about what these look like. They're
All
like
right.
an index card with a tab at the top. And why don't you describe it a little bit?
Sure. It's about the size of a 3x5 inch card. If you're going to use the tool size that's for books having 2 columns of text on a page, or for mathematical equations or column addition, you have a 3-layer sandwich with colored filters that are chosen for assembly. We give directions on all of that. And you customize it with the colored filter that best works for you, then you assemble it. We give directions on how to do that. But there is a window opening where the colored filter will go, and that is where the focus on a line of text is directed. And it enables an individual to pick up the next line of text more readily, which is wonderful for people who are recovering from stroke, some forms of alexia resulting from stroke or traumatic brain injury, what have you. So
adults use these also.
Yes. And I'm continually amazed when I pick up the phone. Last Friday was a case in point where a young lady was recovering from a traumatic brain injury. She essentially was needing to relearn how to read. And she was not given this idea by an educator. She found it by herself online, and she said, "This is going to work for me. I'm convinced about it. Why didn't anybody tell me about it?"
Wow, that's amazing.
And I know. And so she is very excited about the app, which we'll probably talk about later. But I want to talk to you about the actual physical tool. The notch is for decoding words, breaking them down into phonemes, moving it from left to right, so that you're not nearly as overwhelmed by the length of a word as you normally might be without such a tool. If you prefer the colored filter, you can do it that way too. You can decode. But what are
the advantages of the colored filter? What issues would children have where they might favor the colored filter?
Well, first of all, we do not do any kind of physical evaluation. We serve as a bridge from no services to suspicion of a particular condition. And the
parents might want to know, though, which ones they should order. So if they know what the diagnosis of their child is, how might they make a more informed decision?
Well, that's a very good question. We consult with an optometric group, a developmental optometric group here in St. Louis. They recommended that in every kit we sell, there should be 3 colored filters specifically. That's blue, a deep blue, yellow for highlighting, clear non-glare for overhead fluorescent lights, which drives a lot of these readers crazy for many reasons, but we won't go into that. But don't evaluate. We serve the greatest number of individuals with reading issues with these 3 colored filters inside every package. So you choose in your home environment, your home lighting situation, your visual capability situation, so that you end up having the best reading experience with the most comfort. I think
so. The kids themselves can experience these. They don't have to order one particular kind. They can get them and experiment and see which one works for them.
That's right. That's exactly right. And then we're talking about the face color. That's the outside color of the card where the fingers are placed in order to move it down the page. That can also play a part. And we're finding that individuals with traumatic brain injury and stroke issues, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, do best with a black face color. And then they decide which colored filter works for them, home environment, and then they assemble it.
Now, I remember that you have certain templates without, not speaking about the filter now, but the template of the card itself that may appeal to different learning styles. Can you explain those? Because I know you have them, but no one's going to see them. So I know you have some that appeal to kids with sensory issues and both wanting to have something that's more tactile and maybe not wanting to have something that's quite as
right.
What are the different templates that you have available? Would parents have to order those separately, or are those part of the kit that they order?
Well, the basic kits are the packages called package A, and they have a soft, somewhat cushioned material they're made of. And then we have one that is just in one color, only black. It's black textured grip, and it's very nubby. Wow. And children can, or adults, my husband really likes this one.
Surprise.
Can actually rub it somewhat. And that again provides another anchor for the brain, not just the focusing window. So we're incorporating tactile, we're incorporating kinesthetic, all kinds of things in the use of these tools, and that further helps with the focus. Now, I want to mention there are 2 sizes of the card, and the 2 sizes come in every package so that we're always providing an opportunity to read no matter what length of the text lines are. So long tool for long text lines, short tool, short text lines. And I hope that helps you.
You're mentioning that they have to be assembled. Is this kind of an art project? Do they have to have glue and rulers and that kind of stuff to put it together?
Good question. No extra tools required, just the blue sheet of directions we provide, and the adhesive is all in the product. It's called, you just peel off the paper where needed and affix the parts together. Very, very thin 3-layer sandwich. That's the best way to explain it.
Kind of like an Oreo cookie.
An Oreo cookie in the color you require.
You mentioned that there's directions. Some of the kids might want to put this together themselves, and they're putting it together because they have problems with reading. How are the directions? Are they geared toward maybe some of the issues these kids have?
Very good question. It's always a good idea to have another individual, even a caregiver for an adult, to get their input on what they observe while you're putting this together. A parent might say, I know that you have a little difficulty with that particular type of text. What does this colored filter do for that type of text? They might be able to ask the questions that will cause the individual to arrive at a better decision for the colored filter to be chosen. I have to say that. I really think it's best to have a helper with this. It's not mandatory, but I recommend that you have someone, even an adult, someone who knows you and your reading habits. And, I know that you read it for 5 minutes and then you shut down. Does this make your eyes feel a little more comfortable? Because it does provide a vehicle for more reading stamina. That's another thing we don't talk a lot about, but it is.
Are the directions all written, or are they pictorial as well?
There are some pictures in the brochure of what you can accomplish in terms of different ways to use it. But our directions are like 1-liner, 2-liner directions.
Okay.
And you could actually use the top piece of the tool to read it before you're ever assembling anything.
So you can put them together. I think when we spoke before, you called it a dry fit. You can put them together and see what filter you like, what size you like, what texture piece you like, before you actually glue them or use the adhesive
That's
to
right.
put them together.
That's right. A dry fit, loosely, just layer upon layer on top of the text you might normally read. And that provides you with a very good idea as to what you will experience when they are assembled. And when you try each color trial, give your eyes a 5-minute break to kind of reacclimate, and then proceed with the next color trial. Because you'll get 3 different colors of filters per size of the tool.
What size filters do we get?
Okay.
Colors. What colors? Okay. What colors?
Blue, a very deep blue, okay. Very hard to find on the market. Yeah. And a highlighting yellow, and a clear non-glare for overhead fluorescent lights. And I've found that about 75 to 80% of the people I serve choose the yellow filter. But that doesn't mean that a person will automatically choose yellow, because there's a smaller group of individuals with varying types of reading challenges that choose a deep blue. In fact, 2 boys at 2 different events for reading told their parents when they tried the blue filter in one of our tools, that the letters stopped dancing. Or the words stopped shadowing, Mom.
Wow.
And Mom and one of the boys had both parents present at the table. And the mother looked at the dad, and the dad looked at the mother, and it's sort of like a light bulb moment for them, because this is what they had been hearing. The letters are moving, Mom. The letters are shadowing. And this particular deep blue changed that for this child. Right. It's such a subjective experience reading for everybody.
Are the templates all basic colors like black and white, gray and black, or the templates themselves come in different colors where girls might want a pink one and boys might want a black one?
I think you're talking about what we call the face color of the tool, where the fingers are placed.
Okay.
And a person has the ability to either order an assorted color combination, where you get one color out of 10 and another color, one of the short, one of the long, 2 different colors you can try. But there's also the option, package B, to choose a face color you want right out of the gate. And for some individuals, I'm thinking of a young boy who had autism, and his mom said he's in a green mode right now, and he wanted a green tool with a green filter. And we normally don't have a green filter, but we did find one for him. Yeah. And I saw him a couple of years ago, which would mean it's about 5 years later than when he purchased it or was parented for him. And what he said, he goes, when my eyes get tired, even now, he was about 13 then, I use my reading focus card. Although I don't need green anymore, he said.
I'm curious, Joan, because I can just hear some kids saying, you want me to use that in front of everybody? I'm not going to do that. The kids will laugh at me. They'll make fun of me. Right. I already have enough problems. They're thinking, with the kids thinking I'm different. Do you have some suggestions or tips for how to encourage kids to experiment with this?
Yes, I think there's a lot more inclusion of individuals who have unique needs today than there were even a few years ago. But I can say that the older the boy in particular, after age 10 or 11 in particular, I would say a dark face color, black or brown, would be recommended. We do have hot pink and purple for girls. That's not a problem. And we find that when the kiddos choose their own face colors and are involved in the purchasing process, there's more ownership of the tools and more use of them ongoingly. And that's another thing. We have to mention that these tools should be used only when the child feels he needs them. And that could be indefinitely for some children and adults. And it could also mean for just a week or 2 or a month. But I would never force them on anyone. And I do know many adults, and that's not just in the US, but we just shipped some to the Netherlands, believe it or not, this week.
How cool.
Yeah. And This individual was a college student in the Netherlands, purchased by a parent living in Thailand with a home address in New Zealand.
Oh.
So I had to get those addresses right.
Oh.
And so I am still following that package. It was mailed a week ago.
Oh, it's going to be a while.
A week ago. And it looks like it's out of our country and it's heading to Amsterdam, but that's beside the point. We just have a need for these worldwide, and it's something that can help immediately. I think that's important to mention, without side effects.
Before we get into the digital app, which I do want to talk about, you had mentioned, Denise, something about strategy charts that are included with these. And what do those target? How would parents use those or teachers use those? Why do you include them?
We believe in being of good service to everyone that we help, that we support. And that goes without remuneration or compensation many of the times. So we include it. Don't even mention that we include it. We just send it in every package. And it's a list of about 15 or 16 tips. Most of them cost nothing to do. And some of them can be utilized or implemented with things you might have in your household. But many of them are effective, or a combination of them is very effective for some readers. And it would be remiss if we didn't share this information to help promote literacy everywhere. So one of them, I don't know, we can talk about those if you want, but one of them would be just the simple idea of changing the color of the paper on which you print a document or a worksheet or a math sheet or an instruction sheet. And that's one of the reasons why we send our important assembly instructions on a blue piece of paper, because it gives you a sample already right out of the envelope. Here, this is what blue looks like under black text. Because what happens is the black text on a white ground is very stark, sharp, and a lot of readers cannot sustain that visually for any length of time, especially if they have reading challenges of different types.
That's so interesting. It's such a simple suggestion, and it could make such a huge difference to a child who's having difficulty, as you say, with something so bright as a white paper and black printing.
Right.
As a teacher, I don't really think I ever thought about putting a math paper on, a math assignment on blue paper, or a reading assignment that I was handing out to the kids on colored paper. We always take the white paper that's in the printer.
Right, we do. And I often recommend to parents and teachers to purchase a ream of pastel colors, like 5 or 6 pastel colors from an office supply store, and try a different color each week with your class and see what kind of feedback you get from the kiddos. Some will say, oh, I love the blue. Others will say the green. And I have an adult woman who told me, after I gave her this tip, she said, she came back to me at a different conference and she said, I tried your idea. And she said, I print everything on pink paper now. And I know what I read when I print it on pink paper. And I shouldn't have been surprised, but it was great that she came back and told me. Makes such a little thing.
Yes,
it's so inexpensive. Now, it does take a little time, but the payoff can be major. It can be for some individuals. You might have one child who needs to read on a yellow paper, and it needs to be a certain kind of yellow, not garish or bright, but soft, or buff. Buff is another color because it's cutting that white, stark background thing that so many people have trouble with, and they don't even know it. They don't know what's causing the issue.
Talk to me about this digital application that you've created to support these cards, these focus cards.
Well, the idea was born for the handheld in 1998. The app, as we call it now, was born, that idea, in really 2003, but it never happened until 10 years later.
Wow.
Because finances are such, you need to, and we aren't big believers in loans and whatnot and debt.
Uh-huh.
So we moved forward when we had the revenue to do so. So anyway, what is important here is that the app is a digital extension of the handheld physical cards. So what you see in the physical embodiment or iteration of this idea, you can see in the digital version, but to a greater degree is it customizable. You can create any size of a card you want.
Oh.
You can create any color of that sized card you want. You can create any color of the rainbow for your reading filter. And you're given these, like rainbow charts where you pick what color you want, and you choose it, you can change it in the next seconds if it's not just right for you. And what you can do is cover the entire screen if you are an overwhelmed reader by just about anything, any media, pictures, what have you, and focus just on one line at a time. And you can move it with your mouse, your keyboard, your cursor, your arrow keys. If you have touch capability hardware, move it with your finger. That's really elegant, I have to say. It'll move right over any other application you have, even a Kindle app with an ebook loaded into it. This tool will float right on top of your ebook text any way you want it to float. And it allows you to still scroll down if you need to scroll down. Go ahead.
So any written document that you assign to your students, if they can upload it on their whatever technology they have, if they can upload it on a Kindle or on their PC or whatever,
that's right.
And they could use this application that you have, this focus application, to digitally focus them in the reading process the same way that they would if they were holding one of these cards over the reading material.
That's right. That's right, but to a greater degree. You have more manipulating capability of the digital app. And I have to emphasize that this is a desktop app for Mac and PC. Mobile technology cannot support this yet. It's very sophisticated. It will not allow you to have 15 or 20 applications open or tabs available on your computer screen. And you can take this tool and plunk it down on any of those at will. In a mobile application, that's not able to happen yet. So we're monitoring that, and we're kind of watching if anything develops on that front. But right now, we don't see it happening for a while.
All right, I'm a little technically challenged here.
That's okay.
When you say it won't work on a mobile app, what would I not be able to use this on? If I had my PC and was carrying it somewhere, it won't work, or I don't understand what that means.
Okay, mobile technology means iPad, iPhone.
Oh, okay.
Okay, Android phones.
All right.
No, but your laptop?
Yes, okay.
It works for sure on a laptop.
Okay.
Whether it's a Mac or a Windows PC matters not.
So someone would buy this app and they would download it on their computer, we'll say, and then they have it available for anything they want to read, or is it something they have to repurchase when they have different different assignments that they need to read?
The beauty of this app is that it is a one-time purchase, not a subscription per device. On it on one laptop, it's one download forever. Don't renew every year. I am so tired of renewing things. I don't know about you, but we didn't want it to be that way. To us, that's not as accessible as it should be. So we had a one-time download secure from the Mac App Store or the Windows Store. And you can also get it on gumroad.com if you're a Gumroad fan. But anyway, it's far a one-time purchase that's secure on the Mac App Store, Windows Store, gumroad.com. If your computer would crash and you lose that application, call me. I'll give you a free replacement app download. Okay, you can't beat that. You just can't. And we're talking about software here that mimics some applications that are more than $100. And it's a $5.99 download. That's it. One time.
Now you're as a teacher or as a parent, I have my child using this tool. Mm-hmm. And I would imagine that if they use this tool on a regular basis, if they're faithful in using this over a period of time, that there has to be some transformative capability in actually training the brain to read differently. Have you been able to find that's true? Or
yes. Another great question, Judy. We did 2 focus studies to start out that proved to us that reading rate improved, accuracy improved, and because those 2 things improved along with focus and tracking, the reading rate increased. We did not think the reading rate would increase. We really didn't. We thought it would slow readers down. Uh-huh. But if accuracy and fluency are improved, reading rate was the result. The improvement in the reading rate was one of the results. So that was a big thing. These are brain training tools. And that is a newer term that's used in the educational world, I find. And we have only started to use that. But yes, it does train the brain and the eyes to work together more efficiently. And we find that because of that, different people improve their ability to track, focus over time. And it varies how long that takes. Some, depending on their situation, may need it indefinitely. And there's nothing wrong with that. Although there are some educational experts who would not like that idea. I run into traditional principals of schools and they go, well, how long do they need that tool? And it worries me because it means to me that kiddos are not getting what they need as long as they need it.
That's like asking somebody who's wearing glasses, how long are you going to need to wear glasses?
Right. I
don't understand that thinking.
I'm glad to hear you say that because I know that there are traditional ways of dealing with these things, but they haven't been as immediately effective as some other approaches. So I think it's important to mention that. Does that answer your question?
It does. And I just want to, a couple of the guests that we've had, Barbara Allen-Smith-Young has been one of them, who have talked about neuroplasticity or neuroflexibility. Mm-hmm. And of course, there's different thoughts on this, but what your work is showing is that you really can change the functioning of the brain and help develop those connections and strengthen them so that kids, maybe they'll need it, but even if they need it, they may not be as dependent on it as they were when they first started.
That's right. And that goes for everyone across the board in terms of age, whether it's a child, a teen, adult, and they need it later when they're tired. I get this all the time from nursing students, law students, med students who have to read copious amounts of content on a daily basis. And by 11:30 at night, with an exam looming the next day, they need some help. And many of them have talked to me about the reading focus card bails them out. It helps them at the last hour.
You told me about a young person that you're working with. I don't know if it's a male or a female who came to you who wanted to do a research paper on this. Mm-hmm. And I'm just curious, have you had any feedback on that? What's happening with that?
Sure. That was 2011. And that was a reading specialist who was working on her master's degree. And she wanted to do a thesis on this particular tool. She called me out of the blue, and it was a Central Missouri high school. That's where she was based at that time. And she had 10, 11, and 12th graders that she was helping on a remedial reading basis. That's what her objective was, what her assignment was. And she said, I really think these tools could help them. I would like to see how much. And she said, would you be open to that? And I said, well, I would very much like to have a formal study. Because at that point, we'd only had an informal study done with 6th grade students. And to have high school input would be would have been very valuable.
Yes, definitely.
And then if it's administered by someone other than the person who knows me, to me, that was very valuable. I wanted impartial data. Okay. So she was very willing to do this. And was where we were able to find out that fluency improved, accuracy of what was read was improved, and tracking improved to the point where it improved the reading rate. That's what really surprised me. I mentioned that earlier. So she was the provider of that data. And we're talking about 10, 11, and 12th graders, all of which were reading below grade level beginning of the school year. And they used it from October to April. And some of them, and this is the perfect segue to what we were talking about a moment ago. Some of them needed it for a short time, and some of them were still using it in April and wanted to use it after April.
Right.
And she said, would that be okay? I said, well, of course it would. It's what they need to do. And I know she knew that. She just wanted to get permission from all parties.
Right. You had mentioned to me a quote, and I want to use this as a lead in to kind of the end of our talk. But you said to me that teachers need to want to see what others do not see. And that is such a powerful quote, because sometimes as teachers, we're overwhelmed by what's going on in the room. We're so busy that, trying to prepare lessons that are interesting, trying to engage our students, trying to control a disturbance maybe that's going on the other side of the room, that we don't take the time to see what we need to see as teachers to be able to support our students. So if you were going to give teachers and parents some suggestions as to how they might support their kids, what would be some of the tips that you would lay out there? We don't have to develop them, but I just kind of want to throw out a few things. You've mentioned some already, but are there any that you would like to add to that?
Sure. First of all, what you just mentioned, all those things that teachers are doing, it's exponentially more challenging with COVID-19 and the distance learning blitz that we are all experiencing. I see in my mind's eye every night around 11 o'clock how many teachers are still sending emails to parents at that hour. So it's just phenomenal and unprecedented what they're dealing with. So in terms of tips, I would say that there are some recommendations that can be made in an easy way. But I'll first suggest another tip that could be really helpful to a different kind of a reader that's challenged in some way, who is particularly overwhelmed by too much on a page. And that is, let's take the math worksheet for a minute. Normally, I don't know about you, but there's probably 20 to 25 math problems on one worksheet. If you were a child who was easily overwhelmed or who struggled with math in some way, if you saw that worksheet coming down the row or being put on top of the computer screen and for your mom to print out, if you're doing home learning right now, I would be overwhelmed and shut down after the second problem, if not sooner. So one of the things you could do is fold that worksheet, if you haven't printed it on a colored piece of paper, but fold it so that perhaps just 3 problems are visible. That might mean folding it into fourths or cutting it into fourths. Then tackle just one part at a time so that overwhelm isn't nearly as much of a challenge. If that's too much, cut each problem out and give the child one problem at a time. I know it's time consuming, and teachers in a classroom with 30 kiddos, that would be hard to do. Although it could be. You might turn it on the child and have the child, depending on the age, cut the pieces apart. Make sure you don't lose any, okay? Or give them an envelope and have them cut them apart. Teachers can't be cutting 30 of these apart, but you might even try doing everyone the same way and see who thinks they benefited the most from that exercise.
That's a great suggestion. I remember years ago when we used to have to modify some of the assignments for kids, we were told to take a highlighter and just highlight some of the math problems on a page that we wanted the child to do to kind of get a feeling whether they could address the different kinds of problems. But I like the idea of cutting them, maybe creating almost cards and focusing on one at a time so it's not so overwhelming. They're not seeing all this extraneous material on the page, but they can focus on one thing at a time. I like that idea.
Obviously, it depends on how complex the problem is. You want to make sure you give them enough paper to work it through, because we're always telling them to show your work. And that might involve only printing 4 problems on one sheet of paper. Now, your school might give you trouble for using more paper. I don't know, but I'm trying to provide with some ideas. Another one was the highlighting aspect you mentioned. That's another tip. And I will tell you that if they go to our website at focusandread.com, the landing page, the home page, all you do is put in your email address and you get a free list of all these tips for nothing.
Oh, great. Why don't you repeat that?
Sure. Focus, Focus, and A-N-D, read, READ.com. And the page that you land on when you enter that into your browser window will give you a box to put your email address in there. And you'll immediately have access to a downloadable and printable list of 15 or 16 tips that will work immediately. And for one child, 1 or 2 tips might work. For a different child, even in the same family, a different set of tips might be best. So you have to do this empirically. You have to try it out. And if it takes anything, it's time, not money. Thinking ahead.
I know, and as you said, especially at this time in our lives, we're just so overwhelmed with the things that we're doing now that taking the time to do some of these other things can be challenging.
Yes.
But I think you've given us some excellent suggestions, and noticing kids who are trying to avoid something and doing an evaluation and talking to them about why they're having a problem and trying to find solutions rather than feeling that they're being lazy or being stubborn or being the class clown because of their choice and not doing their math. So I think those are some wonderful suggestions, and I hope that our listeners will follow through a little bit more with their due diligence. Go to your website, learn a little bit more about you. These cards, I think, are so innovative, and I think we've all, at one time or another, as a teacher, given a child an index card for tracking, to put it under their reading so that they could track. But the way you design them makes them so much more useful in other capacities, whether it be math or reading or whatever it is that they're doing. I was very struck by them, and I think that it's important to get this out to our mentors out there so that they know some of the resources that are coming into the system now, because sometimes we're just so busy we don't have time to research this stuff.
Right. No, we don't. And it's important to remember that many times special needs teachers have said to me when they see these tools, "Oh, I created a card like that."
Exactly.
Kind of like out of a 3x5 index card. I said, "That's right." Yep. And I applaud them because they're thinking innovatively. And they said, "But it fell apart." Yep. Or it got wrinkled and it got broken, and said, these are really durable. One lady called me and she said, our dog got into it, but it survived. And I said, wow, I don't recommend that. But we give, with every one of them comes a Ziploc bag. And I recommend they store them in there to keep the reading filters from getting scratched. And you might want to know also that even though the app doesn't work on mobile technology, the handheld tools can be used on a Kindle, and they can be used on an iPad or any other tablet. We recommend you use a protective film on the screen for that device so no potential scratching can occur. Matter catches on either surface and might cause a problem, but it'll slip right down. It's built for short lines of text that you find on a Kindle or a Nook, and it's built for long lines of text you would find on an iPad or an e-tablet of any kind.
This is very exciting. It's very exciting technology, and I'm sure there are people who are listening who are having an aha moment of their own, and thinking, gee, this might work for a student I have or my child, and I hope that they follow through and look into this more on your website. We will have the website listed right next to the podcast and some other links that Joan has also shared with us. So I hope our listeners will look for those. I want to thank all of our mentors for listening today. I hope you'll continue to search for information both on Joan's website and look for our other list of guests and go to their websites and check out what it is that they're doing and their suggestions for following through to get more information with all the links that they have. Thank you so much, everyone, for being with us. Please continue to get in touch with me. I look forward to hearing your suggestions for guests and any suggestions that you may have to make the podcast better to help you in your quest for information. Stay well, and please keep connected with me. Thank you. Thank you, mentors, for being with us today. If you found this podcast of value, please visit justeducationfirst.com to subscribe to our blog and Mentorship and Education podcast so that you may continue the exploration with us. Our goal is to provide a free treasury of information for our listeners so they can become acquainted with the amazing resources that we have available to us. We want to thank all of our guests for giving their time and sharing their wealth of information with us. Please also visit their websites and explore more of their resources to further your pursuit of the topic. Hope to hear from you at justeducationfirst.com. Have a good week, and thank you.